thanks for tuning in. Welcome to Food Navigator's webinar, Plants at the Center of the Plate. I'm Deniz Ataman, your host and moderator for this session. Before we get started, I wanted to thank our partners for making this webinar happen today. Our platinum partner is Ingredion, and our other partners include Brightseed, Cargill, Xberry by GNT, and IFPC. I have a few housekeeping reminders. You can download the documents from sponsors in the Downloads panel located at the left of your screen. And for those of you who have questions to ask our speakers, you can ask them anytime during the webinar by simply typing your question in the question box at the top left of your screen. And if you have any technical issues, please refresh your browser. That might clear up some of the issues, but if it doesn't, you can submit your problem in the same question box and a member of our staff will help you. Now let's get started. For this fireside chat, please welcome Ethan Brown, founder and CEO of Beyond Meat. Since launching the company in 2009, Ethan has been at the forefront of the plant-based movement, challenging the conventional food system with a bold vision to create more nutrient-dense meat from plants while using fewer resources and reducing our reliance on animal agriculture. Over the last few years, the plant-based meat category has faced declining sales and skepticism from consumers surrounding taste, texture, and affordability. So how can the category redeem itself? Under Ethan's leadership, Beyond Meat has launched several iterations of its Beyond products, focusing on clean label, texture, and nutrition. In this conversation, we'll talk about how Beyond Meat is navigating category headwinds through innovation and transparency. Ethan, thanks again for joining me today.
Oh, Denise, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So I want to start off first on industry market trends. Beyond Meat's been long considered a trailblazer in the plant-based category, often setting the tone for where the industry heads next. How do you view Beyond's current role in shaping consumer expectations, and what major trends are influencing your strategy right now?
Great. No, thank you again for the opportunity to comment on this. So, if you look at the trajectory of the category and of Beyond Meat, over the last, let's say 10 years, we experienced kind of a meteoric rise. And there was a lot of attention and focus given to the category and to our brand. And that, I think, naturally invited some pushback from the incumbent industry. And they did a very, very good job. The work that was done to reposition our products, not as the healthy ingredient first, products that could have a tremendously beneficial impact on human health, they instead were able to paint them as being processed and full of chemicals. And this particular campaign was very well funded, and it was funded not only by the folks that you would suspect, kind of livestock and associations of that ilk, but also by the pharmaceutical industry, particularly, and we don't know the details of the support, but we have seen public statements from certain companies within the antibiotics industry, those that were selling antibiotics and are selling antibiotics to factory farms and to livestock. So if you see those two very powerful incumbent industries come together to craft a campaign, and you have something like social media where facts can proliferate unchecked, it's a very dangerous situation. And so what we've had to do over the last 3 or 4 years is work to counter those narratives. And what we've done is essentially looked inward and said, okay, how do we become even healthier, even simpler, even cleaner, so that there's very few targets that people can attack. And that's been a very rewarding process, and it's one that we've conducted in collaboration with leading universities, nutritionists, doctors, and I think it came to a head probably most publicly in Beyond 4, which is the latest iteration that we launched of our core products. And in that, we worked with Stanford University, we worked with Joy Bauer, we worked with so many different doctors and nutritionists to really create a product and a product family that could drive very significant health benefits. And we knew our products were healthy. We had done the work before to generate really good clinical data around the results. But we wanted to take it a step further, and that's how we reacted to this.
Do you still think that you have to continuously define what food processing is? I mean, it is a food science term, right? Any food scientist can tell you that the minute you change the chemical makeup of an ingredient, whether it's through sauteing, blending, anything that we do in our own kitchens, is that still something that you have to continuously define and explain to consumers?
I mean, this is a fascinating story of science, public opinion, industry, and disruption. And we've seen these things play out before. The analogy that I use most often is around the ice industry, where the ice industry that existed in the 1850s, where they were cutting ice out of rivers and lakes, was very challenged, obviously, by mechanized, or what they were calling artificial ice. And in fact, spread rumors that artificial ice was contaminated and killed that industry for a while. Now, the Civil War happened, and they couldn't get ice out of the northern lakes down to the south, and so the industry, the mechanized industry, took off again. And obviously, today we use it. But it did turn out that there was contamination, but it was in the ice being cut from the rivers around Boston, where there was industrialization. So it's a very similar situation where a industry that's using heavy amounts of antibiotics and hormones and all kinds of special feed is looking at plant protein and saying, somehow that's heavily processed. And I did an experiment over last weekend where I asked one of the AI platforms two questions. And the first question was, is plant-based meat healthy? And I knew the answer to this. There were several pros that were given, but the first negative was they can be heavily processed. But I then changed slightly the question. And I asked, is plant protein powder healthy? And I got a bunch of positives. The only negative, or the first negative rather, was that there could be additives. Right? There was nothing about it being ultra processed. So this gives you a sense of where this is coming from, right? The most processed part of our products is the protein. And that process is actually very clean, and it helps the consumer if you can define it and understand it. And I'll do that very quickly. So let's say it's Beyond Steak, where we grow the fava beans. We have farmers that grow those beans in Montana and North Dakota and Saskatchewan. And those fava beans are then milled like any other crop. And the protein, the flour, is placed in an air chamber. And because protein and starch have different particle sizes, they separate. And we take the protein and run it through heating, cooling, and pressure on the same machines that are used for pasta. That's how we form the muscle structure. That's it. So there's no kind of deep, dark secret in our processing. It's something that's very, very clean, and it takes the protein directly from the field and gets it to the consumer's plate. So the alternative path, right, is to grow a lot of crops, to feed those crops to an animal, to confine the animal, put antibiotics and hormones to work, etc., and then get that animal to the center of the plate. So over time, when we look back on this period, history will say this was a cleaner and better process. But it's not just a cleaner and better process. What will prevail ultimately is the efficiency of our process, right? The most efficient way between 2 points is a direct line. We are taking the energy sun that's being used by plants to form proteins, and we're taking that protein and delivering it right to the consumer's plate. Over time, that will be seen as a cleaner, better process. Right now, we have to fight some of the baggage. We'll do that, and I think over time, you'll see us prevail.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And speaking of that baggage, plant-based meat, the category itself hasn't been immune to scrutiny, from nutritional labels to perceptions around processing, as you've mentioned. Can you share how Beyond is responding to this criticism and what steps you've taken to build more of that transparency and trust with your consumers? Because I know a lot of other plant-based meat brands are facing similar struggles, and I know folks in our audiences in the category could probably use some insights there too.
Yeah, one is radical transparency. I mean, you should be very transparent about everything you do. As much as the logistics of this can be complicated, if you want to come to one of our facilities, for example, Missouri, you can knock on the door and you'll get a tour. There's nothing that we're hiding. We're very proud of our process. And that's, I think, the way to handle this is celebrate the process, explain it, help people demystify it so that they can get behind it, right? Because right now it's being defined for us, and that's very dangerous. What we need to do is make sure that we are defining it. And I think over time, the consumer will begin to understand it. But you have to be very transparent. You have to, really take a look at the ingredients you're using and use the simplest, cleanest ingredients. And I think what you're starting to see is that when the consumer picks up Beyond, they know that we apply an enormous amount of scrutiny to our ingredients. And that's why we have the Clean Label Project certification. That's why American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association has certified a lot of our products. So get behind the ingredients. Don't use